Why does Beyoncé refuse to speak? The silent strategy that made her untouchable. Welcome to Celeb TV. What if the secret to becoming one of the most powerful women in entertainment wasn't about talking more, but about saying less? While other celebrities flood social media with daily updates and sit down for countless interviews, Beyoncé has mastered something far more valuable: strategic silence. In an age where fame demands constant visibility, one woman decided to disappear from the conversation entirely, and somehow, that made the world listen even harder. The question isn't why Beyoncé rarely does interviews. The real question is how her refusal to speak became the very thing that made her unstoppable. For over a decade, Beyoncé has operated under a media strategy so unconventional it seems almost impossible in today's world. She doesn't explain her music. She doesn't justify her choices. She doesn't sit on talk show couches selling her latest project with rehearsed anecdotes and forced laughter. Instead, she releases her art and lets it speak entirely for itself. This approach began quietly, almost unnoticed, but by the time the world realized what was happening, Beyoncé had already transformed from a celebrity into something closer to a cultural institution. Her last major sit-down interview with a mainstream outlet was years ago, and since then, her absence from the interview circuit hasn't hurt her career. It has elevated it to mythic proportions. Every rare word she does share becomes headline news. Every image she posts is analyzed like ancient scripture. She has turned scarcity into her greatest asset, proving that in the attention economy, the one who controls access controls everything. Before we go further into why Beyoncé refuses to speak and how this silent strategy made her untouchable, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Celeb TV, and drop a comment below telling us what you think about Beyoncé's approach to fame. Do you respect her silence, or do you wish she would open up more? We want to hear from you. The transformation didn't happen overnight. In her early years with Destiny's Child and during her initial solo career, Beyoncé followed the traditional playbook. She appeared on red carpets, gave interviews to magazines, and played the game exactly as expected. But somewhere along the way, she recognized a fundamental truth about modern celebrity: overexposure breeds familiarity, and familiarity erodes mystique. She watched as other stars became tabloid fixtures, their personal lives dissected and their every move criticized. She saw how constant explanation diminished artistic impact, how interviews often reduced complex creative work to digestible soundbites that stripped away meaning. So Beyoncé made a choice that seemed radical at the time but now appears genius. She decided to let her work carry the weight of her voice. She stopped answering questions about her marriage, her motherhood, her creative process, and her political views through traditional media channels. Instead, she poured everything into her music, her visual albums, and her meticulously crafted performances. This wasn't about being difficult or inaccessible. It was about reclaiming narrative control in an industry that had always demanded celebrities hand over that control as the price of fame. The results speak for themselves. When Beyoncé dropped her self-titled visual album in December 2013 without any prior announcement, no interviews, and no traditional promotion, the industry was stunned. It shattered every rule of how major albums were supposed to be released. There were no magazine covers previewing the sound, no talk show performances building anticipation, and no carefully coordinated media campaign. Just the music, delivered directly to fans, with Beyoncé trusting that the work itself was enough. And it was. The album sold over 800,000 copies in its first 3 days and became a cultural phenomenon. She repeated this approach with Lemonade in 2016, an even more ambitious and personal project that addressed themes of infidelity, Black identity, and female empowerment. Again, no interviews explaining the imagery or the intent. The art stood alone, forcing audiences to engage with it on its own terms rather than through the filter of promotional talking points. By refusing to do interviews and explain herself, Beyoncé created a vacuum that fans, critics, and media rushed to fill. Everyone had theories. Everyone had interpretations. And in that process, her work became bigger than anything she could have said in an interview. It became a collective cultural conversation that she orchestrated simply by stepping back. This strategy has given Beyoncé something most celebrities never achieve: true creative and personal autonomy. She doesn't owe anyone an explanation. She doesn't need to defend her artistic choices to journalists or justify her personal decisions to the public. Her silence has become a form of power that allows her to move through the world on her own terms. When she does choose to speak, whether through a rare Vogue essay or a carefully selected documentary appearance, her words carry exponential weight precisely because they are so uncommon. Each statement becomes an event in itself. Meanwhile, her peers who give interviews constantly find their words twisted, their intentions misrepresented, and their narratives controlled by editors and headlines. Beyoncé has avoided all of that by simply opting out of the system. She has proven that you don't need to play by the rules to win. In fact, sometimes the most powerful move is refusing to play at all. Her silence isn't a weakness or a sign of being guarded. It's a deliberate business and artistic strategy that has made her one of the most influential and respected artists of her generation. She understood before most that in the digital age, attention is currency, and the rarest commodity isn't visibility but mystery. As of February 1, 2026, Beyoncé continues to operate under this same philosophy, and it remains as effective as ever. Her recent projects still arrive with minimal explanation and maximum impact. She has created a blueprint that other artists have tried to follow, but few can execute with the same discipline and vision. The reason is simple: strategic silence only works when the work itself is extraordinary. Beyoncé can afford not to do interviews because her music, her performances, and her visual storytelling are so powerful they don't require supplementary explanation. She has spent decades perfecting her craft to the point where the art genuinely does speak for itself. Lesser artists need interviews to add context or generate interest. Beyoncé needs nothing but the release date. This approach has also protected her personal life and mental health in ways that constant media engagement never could. She has drawn clear boundaries between Beyoncé the artist and Beyoncé the private person, allowing her to maintain sanity and authenticity in an industry that often demands both be sacrificed. Her refusal to speak has become her most powerful statement, proving that sometimes the strongest voice is the one that knows exactly when to stay silent. So here's the question we want you to answer. Do you think more artists should follow Beyoncé's example and stop doing traditional interviews, or does the music industry need that personal connection between artist and audience? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.